Thrilled to have David Nunnery here. He is the husband of Leslie Nunnery, and they together have put on this incredible conference, Teach Them Diligently conference. They actually have two of them, and thousands, over 10,000 people go to these events every May, I believe, and we're thrilled to be guest speaking this one. So come on out. I hope to meet you in person at their event, but welcome to the show, David.
It's good to be here. I kind of laughed a little bit the way you introduced me as Leslie's husband, because that's what I'm actually known as here in Greenville. Everybody knows who Leslie is, but they're like, who's this other guy? That's Leslie's
happens
husband.
To me too, David. That happens to me too. You're Angie's husband.
Well, absolutely. And I'm okay with it. I'm okay.
Yeah.
She's great to know, and probably a little bit more fun to spend time with.
Well, I was just on your show for men, and I just thought that was a wonderful idea to do. Why don't you tell everybody about your show real quick?
So Teach Them Diligently has a podcast, and we made the decision as part of Teach Them Diligently's podcast to do 12 to 13 episodes that were specifically for homeschooling men. And so the idea is that, I've had so many men at our events, and I'm including keynote speakers in this category. These are men at our church, men just at the events, men that we see at the co-op, men that come to our event and speak. They always have this question of, my wife does all the teaching, she does all the lesson plans. What more can I do to help homeschool run better? How can I help her? And that question comes from a great heart, because they see that their wife is maybe feeling a little stressed, they have a little bit of tension. They want to help out. They want to do what they can to try to help out. And it's not coming from a place of, man, she's screwing up, I need to come in and, save the day. It's coming from this place of, I love her and I see what she's going through and I want to walk through this with her. But that question comes from, as so many questions around homeschooling, come from this place of, it's an education decision. So the thought is that I have to be doing something education related in order to really contribute. And the truth is, and as we found as we've gone through this podcast, is, and we've known over the last 15 years, and I know you have found out yourself, if you go into homeschooling thinking that it's purely an education decision, you are in for a big surprise. It's going to overflow into everything. It's not just an education decision. It's going to impact your marriage. It's going to impact the way you parent. Really, it's a discipleship question. And so when we started talking about homeschooling, we started talking about the vision in the home. We started talking about mission. Our podcast that we did together, was wrapped around that mission and vision thing. We even had EZ from Livy Waters on, and he started talking about teaching your kids evangelism. We had Stephen Kendrick on there, and he started talking about teaching your kids how to pray. We had David Benham on there, and he's talking about teaching your kids generosity. Nice. And all this stuff is homeschooling. And it is in play when you're talking about the influence that a guy can have on homeschooling. In a lot of cases, it's even more important because you're like the anchor, you're the stability, you're holding things together when your wife is feeling really, confident, not very confident. You're reminding her of the reason why you guys are doing this. And it really challenges you as well to have a good anchor. If you made this decision to homeschool in the last year or two and you're still thinking about, I'm protecting my kids from all this woke stuff, that's what we would call a catalyst for homeschooling. That's not a calling for homeschooling. Your calling for homeschooling is discipleship, to bring your children to Jesus Christ.
Amen. Amen. And what a beautiful thing for the hearts to get knit in a closer way with the parents and children when you have more quantity time with them. And those unique opportunities for discipleship pop up when you least expect it, because it really takes more time being around your kids to see those opportunities and be there for the answers. You could have quality time and just go, okay, what's on your mind? What's on your heart? And they go, nothing. Nope, I'm good. Everything's great. But if you get
especially if they're teenagers.
Yes. But if you get quantity time with them, if you're around more and you're intentional with them, that's going to come when you, I don't know if it's when you deserve it because you spend enough time with them, but it just comes in interesting times when you're out walking with them, when you're helping them with their math, or when you're teaching them something about character because something went wrong. And you just get in those times with them. So I love what you're saying there. I want to reel the tape back just a second. And you're doing ministry as a team, as a family team. And I think that is really unique and cool. And I think a lot of people are inspired when people do that. And so you have 15 years now. You're running this big conference. It's not the only thing you guys probably do, but it's a big thing. And from what I can tell, your family is deeply involved. Some of your kids are involved and so forth. And so what is that like from a marriage standpoint? What is that like with the kids? Give us a behind the scenes sense of that.
So, I remember we have all these pictures of the kids like growing up year after year after year and teach them diligently. And I remember the very first year, our youngest was like 4 years old. And we had all these CB radios among the staff. And the number one thing that everybody was saying through the CB radio was, "Where's Lila? Where's Lila?" Because we have 7,000 people in this building. There were 7,500 people that very first event. And there's all these people and the hallways are crowded. And we're like, "Where's Lila?" And to think about that, and now she's 19 years old and she's a freshman in college. And we have these pictures of all of our kids at the very first teach them diligently. And then we have a picture of all of our kids at the last one that we actually all did together in Round Rock, Texas. And it's amazing to look at that because for a lot of homeschool parents and really for a lot of parents, the two pictures together would quantify, or what they would quantify as success, right? Everybody is together in that very first picture, they're hugging and Lila has got a hold of her mom's leg. The last picture, everybody's a lot older, including myself, and everybody's holding on to each other. Everybody's got big smiles. They enjoy being with each other. And it's something that we have done together. It's like this project that has now gotten into the DNA of the kids. And we did not go through all those years of teach them diligently, telling the kids, when you take this over, or when you get older, you're going to be working in this. They just kind of were there. And there's been different levels of involvement through the years. We've had, some of them would ship books. Some of them would take over the customer service. There was the children's program. There was all these things. And then other times that they just completely dropped out, didn't do anything. And they weren't there that particular year. Maybe they were serving at a Christian camp or something like that. But it's amazing how they all seem to always come back to it. It's like this anchor that has been created over the years. And I was talking to another pastor not too long ago, and he was talking about, trying to encourage this thirst in his kids and working in his ministry for ministry later on. Mm-hmm. And he was getting all kinds of pushback from his kids. And my advice to him was just keep going, because you'll be amazed at how, as they are just around it, it just kind of gets into the mix. It's like it becomes part of who they are, and they can never really get away from it. And so as long as the parents are enjoying it, and the parents are not complaining about it constantly and talking about how a drudgery it is and how horrible it is and complaining about the people that they're serving with, all those other things that you see in ministries, that gets to a whole nother conversation, which is you're not going to fool your kids. And so as long as your love for the ministry and your desire for the ministry is genuine, just the pure fact that your kids are growing up in it, they're around it, they're just it's in the mix, it's going to create a desire in them for it. And that's one of the things that we saw.
You said a really important thing, an anchor point, and I think that this is something everybody can take away, because you don't have to do such a huge project that the Nunneries have done necessarily to have anchor points in your family. You could go serve every year. It's part of your tradition around Thanksgiving. Since we're around Thanksgiving right now, what kind of thing could be around there where you're doing something for others together? Or you guys could do service projects, you could content, you could write a book together, or it can be part of the publishing process, or like us, you could do podcasts. We've seen those anchor points. I've seen anchor points. We did a vineyard once, and that was a huge anchor point for a period of time because we all cultivated the vineyard together. And that was really a neat thing. We have a lot of great memories from that. Now we planted a church a year ago. That's been a total Team Tolpin effort with lots of other people now involved.
Wow.
Just like you, there's lots of other people involved. But what I've noticed, the same thing, is that it's this beautiful anchor.
Steve and I realized that we were getting too comfortable with the world's vision of how to raise our children.
What Angie and Isaac have done in creating this is literally phenomenal.
This program provided awesome scripture-based teachings and just some really great practical applications.
This class has just really rocked my world.
It has given me a vision for not just the different things that we might focus on as parents who are trying to raise our kids biblically, like how our kids are behaving or what we're doing with discipline, but also the things of the heart.
We now have a game plan to how we want to raise our children. We have so many answers to the questions that have been in our mind.
It's not just these hypothetical situations, or it's not just this, here's what I think you should do. It's, let me show you where in Scripture this is.
Do your legacy a favor and yourself a favor and just do it.
One of the best things that we've done this year, one of the best investments we've made this year, and I could not recommend it more.
We're no longer fearing dark days ahead, but we're so excited to raise lights, to be leaders for the next generation.
Of doing something together for the Lord, doing something together that's fruitful. And you can see the fruit from the efforts of teamwork in your family. And so maybe, how did you, marriage is a great topic along these lines. I'm sure it hasn't been perfect as you do something together like that, right? Because there's all kinds of rub that can happen when you're trying to do something big like that. And it's time sensitive, there's deadlines, there's all these things. So how have you actually used this project to actually enrich your marriage? And do you have any lessons about that?
Well, I would say that the roles that the Lord sets out in marriage, those rules, those roles, that order that the Lord has put in place, it is not suddenly suspended when you go into business together or you go into ministry together. Now, the strength of all that is, and the depth, we'll say, of your understanding of those roles is really tested. Because, the Bible talks about, love your wives, talks about wives submit to your husband. Those verses are not, let's talk about the submission part, for instance. A lot of husbands really get that wrong. And a lot of wives really get that wrong because they think that that is like an inferiority thing. Like they're less. Like they're to always do what the husband says and never complain, never do anything to counteract him, have a different opinion, anything like that. And that's not true. There's a level of order there. But the first role that's mentioned of a wife is with Eve, and she's to be a helpmeet. Mm-hmm. And so for, husband that is listening to this, your wife jokes around all the time, for instance, that you'd be lost without her. Well, it's probably true. And you need her. So those kind of things are actually really tested when you bring a ministry and a business into a marriage as well. Because you could have the absolute wrong idea about your wife's importance to you, how badly you need her, how smart she really is, what her geniuses are, what she's really good at, how she compliments you. You can have a really bad idea about all those things. And if you do, and you go into business or you go into ministry together, there's going to be a lot of friction. And so it becomes a stress point. I mean, I've made the case many times talking about homeschooling, for instance, and teach them diligently. And I'll say stuff like, homeschooling doesn't create problems in your marriage. It reveals the weak points that were already there because you're inserting more stress points into the relationship. Well, the same thing is true when you're talking about business and ministry. Business and ministry is not going to create a problem in your relationship with your wife. It's going to reveal problems that are already there in this relationship and this connection, and making sure that you guys have the roles connected correctly and the order in the home is correct, right? Because God is a God of order. That's what those Ephesians verses are really about.
Yeah.
And you got to have all that right. And when you start feeling friction in your business and in your ministry in which you're in with your wife, the problem is that you have weak points in your relationship. So then the question is, what do you do now? You could just shut down the ministry, shut down the business, or you could work on those problems and strengthen it. And by strengthening those problems that you see in the business and in the ministry, it actually makes your overall marriage stronger.
It does, because you're actually forced to come face to face with the real issues that were already there, and and you go to work on them, and then your marriage is stronger. Like, if you do hard things together, you're going to understand where the weak points are, and you're going to work on strengthening those things. And I love that. And I think what you're talking about is right on. Just to talk a little bit more about it, yes, biblical gender roles in marriage, absolutely. But sometimes I think, to echo what you're saying, is people take it too far one way or another. And there's this, and then if you, in the spectrum, if you take it too far this way or this way, now you're not a team anymore. And the power, God's intention, was this incredible team of equal in value, but with different roles. And it's a beautiful thing, and completely two different kind of humans. I mean, clearly, right? Not just physically, but in so many other ways, right? So, and when they come together, it's this incredible thing when working together. But sometimes what we're strong in and our spouse is weak in become friction points when they actually are meant to be blessings. But you have to walk in humility. You have to lead well, and she has to be in submission, yes. But man, if we didn't get their ideas, if we didn't get their exhortations sometimes, if we didn't get their wisdom, if they didn't feel comfortable sharing maybe a better way to do something, we would be woefully less successful in whatever we're trying to do together. And so I just want to echo that. So good.
Yeah, and the other, to take that on the other side, let's say that you're not listening to her ideas, like you're always diminishing what she says, and you are actually not showing her love.
Yeah.
Right? And so when you talk about complementary, your love for her will actually generate submission in her, and it works vice versa as well, right? Her submission to you, and let's just use the word belief instead. Let's say her belief in you will generate love from your side. And so they kind of work together, and they're like their own generator. They produce their own energy. And I think we really miss those things because we get really caught in all kinds of superficial things. We also don't really define it correctly. I did a session at our events maybe 2 years ago, and it was called Husband Love Your Wives. And I went through the 7 sayings of Jesus Christ on the cross and how that relates to husbands, how you're supposed to love your wife as Jesus loved the church.
Yeah.
And the whole purpose behind that, honestly, and the reason why I wanted to do that was because there's a whole lot of talk out there about love, but nobody really knows what it is.
We've been using CTC Math for our math curriculum with our kids, ranging in ages 10 all the way through a senior in high school. Ethan, you're 15 years old. You've used a lot of curriculums. Math isn't like your favorite. But you like this particular math. Why?
It's easy, but I love how they focus more on you learning instead of just getting progress done.
Like you're making progress in your level of math faster than you were doing the same level of math with a different program.
Yeah.
And Solomon, you're almost 10 years old.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've noticed is all of a sudden you're an independent learner. And you actually like math now, huh?
Yeah.
Recently, when I wake up in the morning and I go, okay, we got to get school out, he's like, oh, I already did it. So Solomon, can you tell everybody why you like CTC Math?
I can just get so much done in such a short period of time, and it's so much easier than the other maths I've been through, and it makes it fun.
One of the things that we love about CTC Math is that the different elements of learning have been broken down into digestible learning increments that make it easy for kids to go through their lessons, feel like they've conquered it, and move on to the next. One of the things that I love as a homeschooling mom is that all of my kids can be independent learners, but then when they get stuck on something, I can sit down with them, easily listen to the lesson with them, and just help them navigate if they get stuck. But truthfully, this is one of the first math curriculums that we have used, especially for upper level math, where I haven't had to sit down and work hard with the kids. So if you're interested in figuring out if CTC Math works for you and checking it out, go to ctcmath.com. You've heard me talk about how we're members of Samaritan Ministries instead of having health insurance, which has been so helpful to our family over the last 5 years. But I wanted to share an update. They've recently launched Redeem Health Share, which we've now joined. We've also chosen to have Flex Share, which is an exclusive add-on feature where you can share for things like vision, dental, and preventative care. Redeem is a Samaritan Ministry program and has more program options to fit your budget and healthcare needs, all in a modern digital platform. Most importantly, Redeem upholds the same commitment that Samaritan Ministries has held for more than 30 years. Christians praying for one another and sharing medical needs together. Learn more at redeemhealthshare.org.
And so, men, you need to actually know what love means. And not only do you need to know what love means, but the important side of that is that you have to communicate it in a way that she understands. And so she has to actually understand that you love her, and you have to be communicating it to her in a way that she actually gets. Mm-hmm. So like if she defines your love for her as listening to her and you don't listen to her, well, now you're not loving her. And then usually a man's response to that is, but I work all day and I do all this and I do this and I do this and I do this. You know, she's just not getting it. Well, you need to actually give it to her the way she needs it.
And you can't live well unless you're abiding in the vine. As John, we got to abide. The vine is Jesus. We're the branches, and God's the vine dresser in that word picture in beautiful book of John. And so if we're not abiding in that vine, the fruit that's coming off is not godly fruit. It's just fruit by our own will and our own flesh, which is so inferior. In fact, to God, it's nothing, actually. And so if we want to have a fruitful marriage and be able to be a team that does really extraordinary things beyond our own strength, like extraordinary things that we could, beyond what we could imagine would happen, then we're going to have to be plugged into the vine, because she's not going to feel that love unless we're just so in love with Jesus and abiding in his word and following after him.
Cool thing about that is that once you get all that stuff right, it's not like a conscious decision to impact people. It's like it testifies Jesus Christ, and people see it and it starts actually impacting them. You don't even realize the impact you're having, but you are. You know, there's all kinds of people that are around you that are seeing that. You have young kids. I know you and I were talking, you know, before we started recording. You have 3 that have been married. We have 2 that are married now. And, you know, I'm hearing stuff coming out of my son that I'm like, where'd you get that? And he, you know, my wife's like, well, he's heard you say it, you know, 100 times. And it's really cool.
It's cool.
But, you know, when things are right, you get that kind of that marriage relationship right, when you get that relationship with God right, when you're abiding in the vine, you know, you can't help it. I mean, it just overflows.
Yeah.
You don't have to be a pastor. You don't have to be running an event. You don't have to be, you know, doing any kind of it just happens. If you're with people.
Your marriage is the most powerful ministry that could exist. I mean, just how you love one another is what you're talking about. The expression of that and the interest in that from other people can be amazing. And that's marriage. Your marriage is your first and most important ministry for all of us guys that are married.
Most definitely.
Well, this is incredible. What an honor it is to do something with your family that is glorifying the Lord. I'm assuming that God has done things that beyond what you guys could even have imagined over the last 15 years?
When we first started Teach Them Diligently, it was only supposed to be a 1-year thing. And we literally went around. So we had this team that was working with us, and we went around the table and we were like, should we do this again? And I asked like literally every single one of them. And they were like, yeah, we need to do this again. And not only did they say yes, but they were like, I talked to this person and this is how this event impacted them. Mm-hmm. And it's just started giving us all these testimonies of how the Lord was working through the event. And it was like, I had no idea, that this was happening. And now that we've done this for like 15 years, now we have people that are coming to us and saying, this completely changed my life. They're like introducing me to their kids and say, we came when he was 4 years old. He is who he is because of Teach Them Diligently. And I'm going, whoa.
We experienced that same kind of phenomenon with podcast listeners. And some of them, Angie gets this a lot with Redeeming Childbirth. It's like, this child wouldn't have even been born unless I read your book, because I was going to be done after that postpartum experience. Then I read Redeeming Childbirth, and I'm like, oh.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. It is really the best thing about it. I mean, that is like the currency for the ministry for us.
So your kids got a hold of that, though. That's what's special about it, is that the impact on the children and the legacy that's impacting, because you guys decided to do hard things, obey the Lord, and something together that is like, how does a regular family put on a huge conference and all these things and the logistics and things, these kinds of things. So it's not an easy thing to do that. And so I just want to reiterate, the message is like, whatever direction you're doing hard things in for the Lord, it is so worth it, because your kids are watching and they're seeing the impact. And what you just heard from David is that they're becoming excited about what God's doing and being part of that, and seeing real life examples of how their work for the Lord can help cause impact on people that's eternal. That's special, right?
It is. And it came just because, again, I know that you could echo this. It was just a step. It wasn't like we planned all this out. It wasn't like we went through and made the decision that this was going to happen and this is how it was going to work, and it's this big, huge thing and it's just completely overwhelming. We just kind of stepped out, and it was like we stepped out, and then there was like this flood of water that just kind of came along and just took us. And we had no inkling of what it would be like 15 years later, and no inkling of the impact that it would have on Leslie and myself, no inkling on the impact that it would have on the kids. We have 2 that are working actually in the ministry with us. We have 2 that are not. One of them is a public school teacher here in Greenville and loving it. And it's really kind of funny because we're like, he was a homeschooler. He grew up as a homeschooler, and now he's working in a public school, and he's actually correcting the other teachers' writings and stuff that they put out on their door. They're running it by him before they send it out or put it up. And so it's really cool. And he has taken, talking about that particular son, he has taken actually a kind of a kingdom mindset to what he's doing.
Wow.
And it's pretty cool to actually watch that develop as well. But it all just kind of comes about as a step. It's not like this huge leap. It's not like you're flying in an airplane 30,000 feet above and you got to, leap out, and skydive all the way down and you're terrified. It's not like that. It's literally like this little step. Mm-hmm. And then the Lord just kind of comes along and just like, whew, and just carries you.
Well, you've got godly fruit in your family. There's evidence of it now with kids launching and so forth. And I would love to hear just home discipleship thoughts. How long, what kind of things do you do to disciple spiritual leadership in your home? What kind of activities? What do you think is important? And how do you get yourself to do it when you feel passive and don't feel like doing it?
So I think it comes with priority, in your own heart. When the kids are really young, Leslie and I kind of made a commitment about it. And the commitment went something like, our kids are going to have to run over us to go to hell. I don't, recommend necessarily that particular phrasing, but it does communicate this commitment. Like, we were like, this is, we're going to make this happen. We're going to do everything that's within our power to make this happen, whatever it takes. And, I know a lot of Christian parents have that same kind of commitment, but it doesn't really get radical until you start using that same commitment to impact where you live, to impact the kind of job that husbands take. What is, the wife going to do? If she takes a job, what kind of job is she going to take? And all that kind of stuff. Same thing with the husband. Am I going to take a job in which I'm on the road 90% of the year? Not saying travel's a bad thing, but if you're gone 90% of the time. The other element of this is that, which I think is super important, is what we kind of talked about early on, is time and relationship. You look at, it's easy Google search, 60 to 80% of children are walking away from the faith when they move out of the home. People are pointing at all kinds of issues that are causing that in their head. Social media is causing it. Cell phones are causing it. Public schools are causing it. Drugs are causing it. Alcohol, they point to all these things. And I think all those people have it wrong.
Yeah.
I think the two things that impact that number the most are time with parents and relationship with parents. That's how you reverse that trend. Is you have to work on the time, you have to work on the relationship. And, another statistic is that the average parent only spends 45 minutes of quality time per day with their child. So, and that statistic blows me away. But when you I didn't even really believe it was true the first time I heard it. But then when you actually step back and you think about it, you think about the impact of the cell phones. You think about sports. You think about cheerleading. You think about all the extracurricular activities. You think about the average family is sending their children off to some sort of a school for more time in a day than those children are actually in their bed asleep at night. And then they go to church, if they go to church, and the parents go into the big auditorium and the kids go into their age segregated.
They don't even spend time together at church.
They don't even spend time together at church. And so when you start kind of going through all that, it starts making sense. So these parents are not even eating dinner every single night with their child. And if they are eating dinner, everybody's on their cell phones.
And this is why often I'll say something like largely normal Christian parenting rhythms today are not working. It's because the normal Christian parenting rhythms are a lot of those things you're talking about. It's what's normal is to only eat dinner maybe once or twice a week together, and it's not really intentional at all. It's just about the food and filling our stomachs and then racing off and darting off. And I think that unfortunately the rhythms, what we choose, the decisions we're making are almost in a system. There's like a system of the way to be. And so people fall into the system. Okay, my kids need to do sports. Okay, my kids need to go into youth programs. Okay, my kids need to do this. That's what all their peers are doing. That's what everybody's doing. And a long time ago, Angie and I just were like, we're just not going to be part of the system.
Yeah.
Now, did our kids play sports? Yes, but not in a way that took them away from everything and caused them to miss church on Sunday and became an idol and things like that. Yes, there's ways. So we were always kind of finding ways. How can we still do sports as long as, right? These things aren't happening. How can we still have dinner at least, even with everybody 4 or 5 times a week? Does it have to be every single day a week? I don't know if that's realistic if they're going to do some things, but at least 4 or 5, yeah, let's do that. So we kind of made some of those distinctions. Hey, if we're having dinner less than 4 times a week, something's wrong. And I don't think a lot of parents make strong distinctions. Instead, they become part of the system, and then they don't even realize it, but parental peer pressure is on them, and then peer pressure of kids to do all these different things. And they'd be shocked if they really were honest about how much they are pressured into being part of the system, continuing the system, and then there's really no family time. There's no family relationships to the level that need to be like you're talking about.
Yeah, they hand control over to something else. And once you hand control over to something else, that something else, whatever it might be, becomes an idol really quick. So like cell phones, let's just pick on cell phones real quick. Cell phone, maybe it's a great tool, right? It does a lot of great things for it. But once those little beeps and little notices and little shakes, and that starts controlling your day, now it's an idol. And idols suck the life out of you. I mean, they take over and they do what they do, right? And they destroy. And you start talking about sports. Sports are great as long as you're in control. Mm-hmm. And our kids played sports as well. We did exactly what you're talking about. We never allowed the kids to play in tournaments that would require them to be gone on Sunday. We never allowed them to actually even play sports that would require a Wednesday night because we had church on Wednesday night. Mm-hmm. Church was the main thing. And so we made that a priority, and we would all go to church every single time the doors were open. That was our community. And, sports is a big one right now. I mean, this past year, Leslie and I, we heard more crying parents regarding sports. Mm-hmm. And sports have just, taken over parents' weeks. They're leading the charge. I mean, the sports are now taken over. I mean, the sports are dictating what your schedule is, when you take vacations, when you spend time with your kids, when you eat meals. I mean, the sports are the leader.
No wonder that so many people don't believe they can have another child. Because I mean, how could you believe that you can have another child if you're taking this one every day this direction, and you're taking this one every day this opposite direction? The parents aren't even together. Well, how do you add a third one to maybe your decisions are the foundational flaw? The decisions are the foundational flaw. Yes, you could have more children, and everything would be more fruitful if you didn't get trapped into this normal way of being in today's environment. What kind of fruit? What is real fruit? Is real fruit that my kid's super coordinated and gets a little trophy for winning at baseball? Or not that that's bad. That can be a good thing. Yeah. But is that at the sacrifice of having another child? Because we just how would that possibly work with the way things are working? So everything's a give and take. And I think a lot of people don't even realize they actually have chosen this path, and they've chosen not to do this path over here. But I think sometimes people are almost subconsciously making decisions because they've made everything so difficult on them to even be a family. So it's hard to imagine the family being bigger.
Yeah, you have to anchor all these decisions. What is my mission and what is my vision? And then you turn that into a question, right? If my mission is to bring my children to Jesus Christ, well, now you turn that into a question. What will bring my children to Jesus Christ the best? Mm-hmm. So that allows you to make a choice between two good decisions, because you're choosing the best decisions. Sports are not necessarily a bad thing, but we're not going to play sports at the sacrifice of you doing this other thing that we believe is better for you in terms of what our mission is, to bring our children to Jesus Christ. God says to be fruitful and multiply, and I completely supportive of the way that this is a thing that is your decision, but you're being hindered from making a decision because you don't have the right priorities in place. So you need to make that decision under the shadow of what that big why is: bringing my children to Jesus Christ.
And it's interesting. I agree with you, and then I want to challenge it from maybe someone else thinking differently for a second. Is that of course everybody listening is they think that's their mission. Of course I want my kids. That's why I drop them off here, and that's why I put them over here. No. But the message that, if you listen to this whole show, this episode, the message is no. You are a massive answer. You being intentional about discipling your children, you having more time with them, is validating that really is your mission or is not your mission. If you think your mission 100% is to encourage, disciple, and train them up in the Lord, so that they love the Lord, and that's a decision they'll have to make on their own, and walk with the Lord upon leaving your home, then it can't just be a checkoff box. I dropped them off in youth group, and that's doing it. It can't just be a checkoff box that they have Christian friends and I let them go over to their house. I mean, that whole thing sounds crazy to me anyways. Someone says they're a Christian. What does that mean? Nothing, actually, really, unless I see their fruit and know them for a while. And no, they're Christians, Dad. Okay, let's have them all over for dinner first, and let's get to know them. Let's get to know people before checking off a list. They've got Christian friends. They've got youth group. We go to church on Sundays. We're good. That is my mission. What do you think, David?
No, I think that you need to come to this point that you are the facilitator to Christ and not the hindrance. So the command, as you were saying in the Gospels, right? Jesus was talking to the parents. He wasn't talking to the disciples. The disciples are actually hindering the parents from coming to Jesus Christ. He was talking to the parents. He was, that command to bring your children to Jesus Christ was given directly to the parents. And so the mission and the command and the urging that God gives regarding children coming to him is for the parents to do that. We also need to get to a point where we actually see ourselves as God delights in using us. You know, I think that the model for Christian ministry is the feeding of the 5,000. It's not the manna in the wilderness. It's the feeding of the 5,000. You know, just kind of go through it real quick. Jesus Christ had compassion on the people, you know, and he taught them and he ministered to them. And then when it started getting late, the disciples, thinking that they were doing a good thing, came to Jesus and said, you know what, it's time to send them off into the cities so they can get something to eat. And then Jesus says, you give them something to eat. And you can imagine on the disciples when he does that, they panic comes across their face. They start freaking out. And then they go and they find a little boy's lunch, which basically was sardines and crackers. And they say, this is all we got. And Jesus says, give it to me. And then he told the disciples to have everybody sit in groups of 50. And he blessed it and he thanked God for it. He handed it to the disciples, and then the disciples handed it to the people. And then I think that's illustrative, right? That is the way ministry works today. And I think that that's the way parenting works. That God wants to work through you to reach your kids. He doesn't want to just drop truth from heaven like manna. He wants to come through you. And I think that parents need to stop making excuses, and they need to stop looking for somebody to bring their children to Jesus Christ. They need to actually say, I'm the facilitator here. I'm the one that God delights in using, and I need to be the one that brings them to Jesus Christ.
Well said. So well said. Practically, what are a couple things you do with the kids? I know
I think the number one thing right now is something that I think the parents overlook, is this idea of tradition and celebrations. And, you know, a tradition and a celebration should be simple, but it should represent what's important to you as a parent. So, you know, we're talking about, you know, you come into Christmas, right? Parents, man, you should have all kinds of traditions and celebrations around Christmas. Thanksgiving, you should have all kinds of family traditions and celebrations as it relates to Thanksgiving. You know, what you do for the kids' birthdays, there should be all kinds of little things around that, of how you celebrate it. You could even get into, you know, what you do when everybody sits down at the kitchen table. We just started talking about cell phones in our family. If I picked up my phone at the kitchen table when we were all having dinner, all my kids would say, phone's in the middle, phone's in the middle. And they would just start ridiculing me. And that's something that was taught over time. Blessing the food before you eat it, even when you're at a restaurant. Holding hands when you bless the food. Those are like traditions and celebrations and all kinds of stuff that feed what is important to you. You're nurturing your kids through knowledge throughout the year, right? Teach them diligently, verse Deuteronomy 6. You know, when you walk, when you lie down, you have it on the walls, you have it on the doorposts, when you're eating dinner. You're doing that Yeah, always in the in-between times, right? When you ride it in the car together, you start talking about it when you're walking in the woods.
Discipleship's not an event; it's a way of life in your home. Either
Absolutely.
it's a way of life in your home, or it's probably not happening.
Exactly, and so you start developing, the things that you're nurturing through the week and through the month and through the year. You start creating little traditions and celebrations around those things. And so we have a candle that we talk about often that is in a little glass jar, and we drop little, corn kernels in there. We give the kids 3, and we go around the room, around the table, and each of us say what we're thankful for. We do it on our trip around Thanksgiving. And it's become this thing, and when we get ready to go on the trip, the kids are going, hey, did you bring the candle? We do a Jesus tree where we actually have a little paragraph. We have little ornaments, and they came with a little paragraph that describes what the names of Jesus mean. And we will take turns picking up one of the ornaments, put it on the tree. It's not a beautiful tree, that's not the point. It's that actual tradition and celebration. And they become anchors as your kids grow up that they constantly return to. We were just talking about the ministry and the business side of that, how that kind of becomes, so did celebrations and traditions and, these regular things that you do together as a family. Parents need to develop those things.
So
they need
good.
to think about them. They need to keep them simple. And here's the other thing. You don't have to be perfect about it. Let's say, our kids, it would be, life would get crazy. Yeah. We're like, man, we meant to do the Jesus tree this year. We forgot this year. The next year we made a point to do it. We do it for 2 or 3 years, and then the next year, oh man, we messed up.
On that, by the way, we always do. I have a whiteboard I bring out, and we write down all the things we're thankful for that God has done in this last year, and we just add to it, and we add to it. And talking about imperfect, I didn't forget. I just haven't got to it yet, and we're here past Thanksgiving. And it just didn't kind of work out in everything we were doing, and so, but I'm still going to do it. And I think that's the point that you just said, is that it's okay. You missed that spot, do it at a different spot, and but do these celebrations and do these traditions of the family doing things together that are honoring to the Lord and discipling and creating connection and wonderful times that they look forward to. And that is, as your kids launch, that's going to become even more important, because they are going to think about and convince their spouses of, what are you coming back to? And so
and not only that, they start creating their own, because they're just emulating what you did. And it's not like I had this class, hey, when you get married, you need to do this, this, and this, and this. They're just, this is what we always did, so we're going to do something too. And so I'm getting pictures from our kids, of them getting dressed in pajamas and decorating their tree together and laughing and having a good time with their babies. It's just something that they emulated, that they just kind of carry forward. This whole legacy thing that we're talking about is a really practical way to disciple your kids, is celebrating and having these traditions that you constantly return to, that have a regular cadence to them, and actually have this kind of discipline element to it, even though it's imperfect, as we talked about. But it still is something that you do on a regular basis. It's like there.
I think David, we're going to have to do this again, because there's so much we could talk about, and it's so rich.
I love talking to you, man. I'm willing to do it anytime. It's a lot of fun, and I think we think the same way on a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and I can't wait to see you guys at the conference in May. Where can people find out more if they want to go to the conference, or anything else that you guys are doing?
Oh, well, I have a free gift for your audience, and it's 7 attributes for homeschoolers for homeschool success. So if you're a homeschooler, you're listening, if you are thinking about homeschooling and you want some more direction, if you're a husband, you want to try to help, all that. Let me tell you, if you take this audio that I'm about to give it to everybody for free, and you just listen to it, you go, hey, darling, let's listen to this together. Man, she'd be so thrilled.
She would.
I mean, that would be music to her ears.
Yeah.
So you could find this audio. It's 7 attributes for homeschool success. It's a session that Leslie gave last year at our events. And it's at teachthemdiligently.net/courageous. And so I'll send you over the link so you can put it in the show notes. The other thing that we're offering everybody is a $20 off promo code. And so that is Tolpin 26. So it's your name and it's 26. I'll send that over to you as well. And where you would find this, our website is teachthemdiligently.net. You could actually go to Google and just type in Teach Them Diligently, and we're like every option that pops up in Google. And then we've also started this new thing that we talk about a lot. It's called homeschooling. Are you a homeschooler or are you a heart schooler? And it's more about reaching the heart of your child. And the way we look at it is that if you reach the heart of your child, you're going to reach their mind. And by reaching their heart, you actually make them more successful. And they actually are able to gain more of the academic stuff that you want, but you're not just educating that, you're educating their heart as well. And so what you're actually doing is bringing them to Jesus Christ. And so we talk about that a lot as well. And matter of fact, that's something that we actually describe in 7 attributes. So we'd love for everybody to take a look at that audio, go grab it. And also we would love to see you guys at Teach Them Diligently events. They're both in May 7th to the 9th in 2026 in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee.
Yes.
And the very next week, we're in Branson, Missouri, May 14th to the 16th.
Yeah, come on out, everybody. Angie and I will be at both. We're looking forward to it. And David, what a pleasure to be talking with you, and loved it so much. I know people are going to get a lot out of it. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you.